Start transmission. 4, 3, 2, 1. Broadcasting to you live from the Static Clan compound, you are now listening to the Jaysin Static Experience, a podcast from an award-winning nobody, noted raconteur, Renaissance man, a man with a sailor's mouth, but he has never sailed, and who likes to talk about a cornucopia of topics. This podcast is brought to you by www.jaysinstatic.com, a place filled with all your pop culture antiques and collectible needs. And now your host, the one and only Jaysin Static. Welcome back, everybody. Jaysin Static back again with another episode of the Jaysin Static Experience. And today, you guys, I have a treat for you guys. You guys might know that I've been in the wrestling business, and I met somebody along the way. I've never met the guy in person, but I met him through Facebook, and he's quite the character. You guys know him as the bad boy Bob Cook. And I will say this, probably the guy with the best punch in professional wrestling ever in my book. Talking him up a little bit, because he's a phenomenal worker. He's been all over the place, trained with one of the greats, and I have nothing more to say, but Bob Cook, welcome to the show, my man. Welcome.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, but I thought you were talking to Jerry Lawler there when you said the best punch in wrestling.
Oh, come on, Bob. You undercut yourself, man. You're undercutting yourself. You know you had a great punch. Everybody knows it too.
That's true. It was a pretty sweet punch, but Lawler had the best.
Okay. I'll give Lawler a very close second. Like one step down from you. But that's just my opinion, and opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, right?
More than ever now.
Exactly, more than ever. Definitely more than ever. So how you been, Bob? What have you been up to, man?
I've been all right. I'm getting older. Amazing I'm still alive being a wrestler. Most of us die younger.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because I'm in a lot of pain.
Right.
But that's another part about being a wrestler that people don't realize.
Right.
Just because I was a jobber in the eyes of the ignorant money marks out there, I also was in a lot of pain because of those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it on my show numerous times with people. Just no matter where you were at in the lineup, the pain was all the same. And I mean, I didn't have as long of a career as you, but I had my fair share of getting beat up. Knee injury, tore all the ligaments. And, concussed once. And, so, I mean, I've had my fair share of the bumps and the bruises. I might not be in as much pain as you, but I can definitely understand that.
And I'm not necessarily complaining, although I complain to myself a lot, but I never pay attention to myself.
Right.
I loved my time in wrestling, and I would do it all over again in the same position, because in my personal thought process, everybody in wrestling means something. Not everybody can be a star, but everybody can be an asset.
Yep.
And it's up to you to decide where you want to be. But the wrestling fans don't see it that way, though.
So yeah.
We don't care about them.
No, everybody's got to be a superstar. To them.
The fans, that's for sure.
I've seen some of your posts, Bob's a bunch of pig-faced bastards and
Right, overbearing, obnoxious, pig-faced bastard miscreants to the core.
Yeah.
Sicken me beyond belief. If I had cancer, I'd want to live just a little longer so I could suffer a little more.
Definitely. Oh, man, I had a conversation with a guy the other day, and I was talking a little bit about the fandom, the fans from today, and the fans from like the old day, the older days, maybe your time period. I consider myself a part of the newer school. What's it like? I mean, you've seen both spectrums as being a pro wrestler, and then semi-retired, Bob. You're semi-retired now. I think you do a couple of things every once in a while.
Well, I mean, technically retired, but when someone calls and says, "Hey, you want to do a show?" I always go, "Yeah."
Yeah.
I'm stupid. Okay.
Yeah, might as well.
I wouldn't, but I do that.
So what's
I was actually supposed to wrestle May 2nd, but because of some I don't know, some wacky disease. I don't know if you heard about it.
No.
They canceled everything.
No, what's this disease? What was this disease, Bob?
A virus or something?
Virus.
Zombie apocalypse.
I call
What's
it.
going on now?
Yeah, I call it the COVID 1984.
Yeah. Zombie apocalypse is going on now if you're watching the news.
Yeah, definitely.
Herds all over the country.
Herds of people all over the world. But
it really does look like a scene out of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it does. It does. I didn't think about it like that. It does.
That's what I said before. I said it looks like a scene out of The Walking Dead, except the zombies don't know any better.
Right. Bob, you've always been a man of many words, and I'm pretty sure I've seen you say that before, and I'm in agreement with it. The zombies don't know no better when they go out and destroy stuff. And I actually talked to a guy the other day, and I told him I was just like, that's the biggest problem I have with it is just like nobody in their right mind would be perfectly okay with like just people going around randomly destroying things. I made a post the other day, and I said, for all the people that are okay with people destroying other people's properties, give me your address so I can come with a horde of 40 angry people, and let me destroy everything that you have.
Exactly. I've seen people say, hey, it's just stuff. It can be replaced. Well, guess what? If someone comes in your house and tries to take that stuff, they're going to need to be replaced because they're going to get shot. Yeah, and that's one of the things that, a lot of people aren't understanding about it is like people are more than in their right to protect their property and their lives and everything else. And I don't think that's what you see it through social media. People just don't understand that. And it's more of a warning to people like, hey, don't steal my stuff. I read somewhere that Pro Wrestling Tees, you heard of that company, I'm sure. Yeah. Has been deemed racist because they've taken measures to protect their business. Now, that is beyond pathetic. It is, yeah. Anybody who thinks that way deserves to go the way of anybody who stops breathing and continues to stay there. Yeah. Because that's just the stupidest mindset of all time. And you know what you got to do, really? We talk about today's wrestling fans versus last, years ago. Yeah. But you have to equate the wrestling fans that hate everything and speak out against everything to the same idiots that are looting. Most people involved in these protests are good people who just want to get the message across. Then you have the looters. Yeah. Consider the wrestling fans today that are never happy as the looters of the wrestling business. Because your average wrestling fan just likes to watch the show and go on down the road. But then you have your outspoken ones who think their keyboard is the answer to all the world's problems, and they're really just, idiots. Yeah. That's what it is. You have the looters of the wrestling business are the ones who just can't be satisfied. I think I've actually used that terminology, of the fans of just being, the constant nonstop bitching and complaining about everything and anything as being, it's like not the majority. It's just a small group. Oh yeah. And it's unfortunate in society today. It's the people with the smallest footprint are always the loudest everywhere, especially on social media. It drives me nuts where you have somebody, you could have the best wrestling show of all time, and because the guy you didn't want to win loses the main event, you're up in arms and you want to cancel the network and you're this and you're that just because he didn't win. Yeah. That's the most ridiculous attitude ever. That's like saying I don't watch Seinfeld because I didn't like Newman. Yeah. Stupid. This plain stupidity. Yeah. What was what was I was gonna ask you a question. I couldn't think of the. No, she said she was 18, but I found out later she wasn't. Ooh, is that a road story, Bob? Well, yeah, sure. A really good one too. Well, maybe we'll keep that for a little bit later. We don't want to have a little cooker run around. Yeah, we don't want to blow the proverbial load before we even get into this thing. We're only but that's we're only like 15 minutes in. We can't blow it this quick. We got to go that 60 minutes, man. So what was the big difference or what was some of your the most things that you enjoyed about some of the time that you spent in WCW and WWE? I wasn't in WWF. Well, that's what I meant, WWF, yeah. Ago, but I was only there a year, but they were both good in their own ways. I mean, WCW didn't pay as much, but WWE paid in cash.
Right.
Plus, they flew you everywhere, whereas we had to drive in WCW, which I didn't mind because my mentality was we'd leave on Sunday, get back on Friday, have a day off, and leave again because we had to drive.
Right.
This meant less time at home with my wife, so it was like, a blessing.
It's a blessing. You trained with the Great Malenko. What was it like training with the Great Malenko?
It was great. I mean, he never did the things that you hear a lot of wrestling teachers, especially of the old days, do. He never stretched you. He never browbeat you. He never, he never abused you.
Right.
He never yelled at you. He told you from day one, at least from my perspective, going by how I was trained, the very first day, explaining to us what the business was about, that it was a work, the idea is to make it look real without being real, look stiff without being stiff, whatever.
Right.
That was the business. That was the art. And he taught us from day one. That was the way. He also taught us how, to shoot and do different moves to protect yourself in case somebody got smart in the ring or, a fan jumped around or whatever. But
yeah,
he taught you the basics of the business at the very start, where you hear stories where guys go, they beat me up for 6 months and didn't smart me up till the day I was in the dressing room. It's like, whatever. But
yeah,
he didn't do that.
Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't know when I first became a fan in the I'd say late 80s maybe. I mean, I was still a kid though, so I didn't really learn about Great Malenko until later, and I learned who Great Malenko was through Dean Malenko. I was an avid growing up. I was a big wrestling fan, and I learned a lot about wrestling. Not even just before I got into business, but the backside of it. Reading the after mags and stuff like that, and you get little tidbits of stuff, but that I remember coming across Dean Malenko, whenever he first got into WCW, and then, looking up, on the rudimentary internet that we had, and then reading it through, magazines and stuff like that about, the Great Malenko. And I never actually, got to, see any of his work or anything like that. I've now with the advent of, YouTube and stuff like that, it's a lot easier to go back and watch some of that old stuff. And, I just, he to me, it was, his namesake that he had, the Great Malenko. The dude was a phenomenal worker.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a lot on there.
Yeah.
But what there is, it's good stuff. But he was fantastic. And I was honored to be in the very last match he ever had.
Oh, wow, that's cool. You want to talk about that?
2, maybe, I don't know. It's 91 or 92. I don't know the exact year, but it was a part of a show that we were doing here in Florida called Sun Coast Pro Wrestling that Malenko had started with another guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we had local TV. Ran about 3 years, started in 89, and I was the masked superstar. Yes, the masked superstar, not the original. So suck at anybody else who has a problem with it. If the person that trained you called you one day and said, "Hey, I want you to be the top heel on this TV show that we're going to do, and I want you to be the masked superstar," what would your answer be?
Oh, I'd definitely say yes. You don't turn that down.
And I feuded with Dean Malenko on that show, and it was fantastic. But the last match that Malenko had was the Great Malenko against a guy named Frankie Reyes, who was basically a referee that Malenko had trained.
Right.
But in this, just because of storylines as part of the show,
right,
it was me and a lady friend called Penelope Paradise. I was the masked superstar. And Penelope Paradise against the Great Malenko and Frankie Reyes. And it was just so much fun. It was one of those matches that's the double-edged sword. You're like honored and proud to be part of something like his last match, but sad that it's his last match.
Right.
And he was beginning to decline in health at that point because he had gotten cancer and whatever. But
right.
Still fun to be part of that.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I go back and watch it and cry.
Is that on YouTube?
No, I have it on DVD, but the guy who owned the company is working on getting a lot of that stuff put on YouTube.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Like I love there's so much wrestling, nowadays. It's so hard to keep track of all of it. But there's aspects of wrestling that I just keep going back and watching. Like I remember I was watching it was about a week or two ago. I was watching some Ricky Dozen matches, I think he was a Japanese superstar.
He was killed by the mafia in the 60s.
Yeah. I was watching some Lou Thesz stuff, and that just came across there, and I started watching that, and it's just like, it's fun to go back and watch some of the stuff that's, not from your time period. Like I grew up in the 90s, so I'm a product of wrestling in the 90s. So watching that stuff compared to watching stuff today, and then going back and even watching the stuff further back, it's the same thing, but it's really different. But it's the same thing, but it's different. You know what I mean? Like, it's all good in my opinion, but
well, I don't know about all of it.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's good, some of it's not. But
sometimes you can go back and watch any footage, but the old footage, and just go, how did wrestling survive as long as it has?
Yeah.
You can watch wrestling today and go, how is wrestling going to survive any longer?
Yeah. I don't know. Wrestling is like, wrestling's like a cockroach almost. Like those things can survive. I was talking to somebody a while back, and I was telling them, like, wrestling, it comes in waves and phases. Like, you have your super peak popularity. I'd say, the Hogan era was pretty crazy, and, that
was the biggest,
probably the biggest era, and then the advent of the NWO in the late 90s, it kind of blew up and stuff like that again. But it kind of goes in waves of, like 10 to 15 years where, like, it'll be super popular for like a good solid 5, maybe 6 years. And everybody and their brother will be watching it. And then it just kind of slowly fades out of existence, only to like reemerge like, hey, look at me, I'm new. Like, check this out.
It's usually based on someone comes along that sparks people's interest. I mean, you had Hogan in the 80s, and you had, like you said, the NWO burst in the 90s, and of course Steve Austin.
Steve Austin.
The 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s was like the king of wrestling.
Yeah.
And then they really haven't had anything since that, as far as to that degree.
No.
You had Cena and the guys that have been able to carry the companies to where they are today, but it's never gotten as popular as the 80s and 90s.
Do you think there's anybody in the business? I don't know how much wrestling you watch, but do you think there's anybody in the business that can bring it back to that prominence? Whether no. in any of the promotions around.
Not that I see right now. I don't see anybody, but I mean, who knows? Like you see, like the AEW promised you all these things. Oh, we're going to be sports based. We're not WWE. Basically, they are WWE 2.0, and sometimes even worse than that. Some of the people they got on the show, like Marco Stunt, I don't give a shit. Sorry, can I cuss? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Say what you want. I said, crap. I told you earlier. Say what you say. Say what you want to say, man.
Right. I don't give a crap if the kid can work circles around, Ric Flair in his prime. You don't belong in the ring.
Yeah,
it makes it look like a joke when you got a kid who's literally 110 pounds, 4 foot tall, wrestling wrestlers, and they're bumping around for him, and it makes the wrestling business what people who don't like wrestling think it is, and that's a joke.
Right.
If you tuned into wrestling for the first time and that's what you saw, you'd be like, what the hell am I watching? I'd rather watch paint dry, especially blue paint. A nice bright blue, that's always good. But it's like, I just don't get it. Doesn't matter if you have a heart for it and you can do all the moves. Don't matter. You don't belong there. Not everything's for everybody. Hey, maybe I can ride a horse. Doesn't make me a jockey.
Right. Me personally, I'd be the perfect. I was a small guy. Like I'm not a very tall guy.
Not that small, were you?
No, I'm not. I'm like maybe like an inch or two smaller than Mysterio. But I realized that there was a certain place. There was a certain level that I was never going to be able to attain because of my size and everything like that. What I lacked in my size, I made up in. I always say I made up in my physicality. I didn't purposely go out and try to hurt people, but I made it look as real as I possibly can. To where and I was the undercard guy. I was never a champion. They used me like the undercard guy, as you would say. They used me as the job guy, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And I knew my place. You know what I mean? I knew my place on the card, and I knew where I was going to be at, even though I had aspirations and hopes to get higher, but I knew where I was going to be at on every card that I ever went on. And I mean,
I'm just saying, a guy like that, he just looks so out of place.
Yeah. I mean, I was short, but I was beefy.
Well, that makes a difference too.
Yeah.
He literally looks like a 10-year-old kid, and it's not his fault. It is what it is, but that doesn't mean he belongs there.
Mm-hmm.
He could be the nicest guy in the world, but if that's your showcase, that's going to take up some of your national televised space on your show.
Right.
You're doing something wrong.
Right. And it also helped me out that I had a pretty wild personality. So, I like to say I had a little something that made me a little bit different, and helped me out to get, to do the stuff that I did. I wasn't a flippy guy. I knew I wasn't the athletic guy. I could go. What I made up, where I lacked at, I made it up in the physicality and in my character, essentially. And some of my favorites in wrestling, I was telling somebody, the people that I always liked in wrestling had like really big character, personality type stuff. One of the guys growing up, he probably wasn't the greatest worker in the world. Most people would say, Ultimate Warrior. Like I really enjoyed him as a character. He was over the top and wild. Wasn't the best worker from what I've understood, but I think character adds a lot if you have a good character, if you know what I mean.
Oh, definitely. Especially you're talking about back in your youth, you weren't looking at the characters as good workers or bad workers. You're just looking at them as, oh, wow, that guy looks cool.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that's missing in wrestling today?
Characters?
Well, not your over the top
characters. I don't know.
Like character. I consider you guys like your Hulk Hogan's and your Macho Man's, and while they were good workers and everything like that, they had a really over the top personality and a really over the top character, and that's kind of what, in my opinion, is what made them is because there was something about them that made them seem larger than life.
Well, definitely. I mean, that's the difference between someone who's like ultra successful and someone who's me. They have an over the top character and an appeal to the mass audience, and if they're promoted right, obviously like Hulk in the 80s, my God, he got over like gangbusters. And anybody who criticizes anything about the Hulk Hogan character and how successful it was is nuts, because success speaks for itself.
Yeah, it's all about who can put the most asses in the seats, right?
But it's usually the people nowadays who don't like Hulk are usually wrestling fans who just read or shoot interviews by disgruntled, jealous old wrestlers who either didn't save their money or never worked hard enough to get what they thought they deserved. Mm-hmm. And so they blame Hulk for it. And the wrestling fans, I don't like Hulk because he held that guy down. But the reality is, you only held yourself down. Like I had chances in WCW to do more than I did, and I screwed up every single one of them.
Right.
Is it my fault? Yes.
Would you care to elaborate? Would you care to elaborate on any of those screw ups?
Oh well, I mean, like when Dusty was running WCW, he was going to tag team me with somebody and make me. I was going to be one of the state patrol guys. Doesn't matter if it wasn't going to be main event, but I was going to be working full time and going to be a tag team with Buddy Lee Parker as the state patrol, and that didn't work out. But he always told me, "But I want you to get in a little better shape." Okay, I will.
Yeah.
And then I go to the bar and get drunk and drink Mountain Dew all day. And then he's going to tag me and a guy named Joe Cruz up. We were going to be the new Assassins, and we were going to have the original Assassin, Jody Hamilton, as our manager. We even went to the power plant and trained with DDP and the Assassin himself, teaching us different psychology for tag teaming and stuff. But it was always that, I want you to get in a little better shape. And, there were times where I was supposed to go to the power plant, and I would say, I don't feel well today. Just stupid, lazy shit. It was my own fault.
Right.
I don't know if it was, maybe I was either afraid to succeed or complacency in my spot. I never had a problem being where I was. I enjoyed, there wasn't a lot of pressure when you were just doing TV. I mean, I hated the idea of maybe messing up, but there wasn't like a lot of pressure because you weren't the star.
Right.
You knew if you were going to go out there for 5 minutes and you were good enough to go out there and do what you were supposed to do, there's not a lot of pressure. I mean, I always got nervous, but that was just, I always thought if you didn't get nervous before you go out, that meant you didn't care. But I always got nervous, but then once the bell rang, you just go.
Yeah, you just kind of do your thing.
But I don't know if it was just complacency, fear of success, who knows. But I think had the chances, and I blew every one of them.
I think that could be a little bit of both. I've told the story on my show before that I had a chance to I don't remember the exact year. Maybe it was 2012, maybe 2011. I was pretty fresh in the game, maybe a year in or so. And a buddy of mine, his name's Nick Redenauer, and he did some T-shirt stuff for WWE back in the day, back when it was WWF in the 90s and stuff like that. And he became really good friends with Earl and Dave Hebner. And this was when Earl and Dave was both running in TNA. Well, TNA was doing a kind of like a little tour of the Midwest where I'm at, and they were running over in Illinois, and then another show in right on the border of Illinois and Indiana. And he asked me if I wanted to come, so I was just like, hell yeah, man, no problem. I'll come up. And the mistake that I made is I left my house, and in a realm of being super excited to possibly have an opportunity. I didn't have no guarantee, but it was just the idea of it. So when I left my house, I didn't realize that I didn't grab both of my bags. I grabbed my normal, my bag, had my normal clothes in it because it was going to be, an overnight type thing. So I grabbed my overnight bag, but I didn't grab my gear bag. And it was sitting right there by the door. I just, it kind of blanked in my mind. And then whenever we got up to the place, or got up to the area, and we were in kind of like a little carpool, and it was me, Earl, and then Nick, and talking to Earl the whole time. And, Earl asking me questions about where I worked at and everything like that, how long I've been in it. And then we stopped at this truck stop, and D'Lo was in the other car. And D'Lo pops his head out the window, and he looks at me and he goes, "Hey kid," he goes, "I hear that you're a wrestler." And I was just like, man, how did you? In my head, I'm like, how did you hear that? Like, but Nick, my buddy Nick, told everybody. And he goes, we had a situation where somebody wasn't able to make it. Do you think you'd be able to work? I was just like, yeah, whatever you guys want me to do. He goes, you got your gear with you, right? You got your gear and everything like that. And I was sitting in the back seat, and we're in kind of like a Jeep Cherokee type thing. And I looked back, and I was just like, oh fuck. and from that point on, like it was from that point on, like the whole time that I was at the whole rest of the show, everybody that was there come up to me and they were like, "Oh, you're the kid that forgot his bag. What's the number? What's the number one rule and that you learn in training? Always be ready. Have your gear bag and da da da." And it was just like I constantly was ribbed the whole entire time that I was there. And there was guys. D'Lo was there. AJ Styles was there at the time. Samoa Joe, Jeff Hardy, and Abyss, and all of these guys were there. And it was just like, man, like I made a total fool of myself. And I didn't get to wrestle at that point in time either. But I thought being ridiculed by, all of those guys was pretty bad, but it got even worse whenever I got home and all of the boys found out back then, like for, my core group where I trained at and everything, like, oh my God, it was so bad. Like those guys messed with me more than those guys did. And it's pretty bad there for a little while because everybody in the area where I was knew it, like everybody. And I was just like, I was the guy that forgot his bag and fucked up a chance. So
yeah, that's like one of the rules of thumb.
Yeah,
I actually made my most money for one match ever bringing my bag when I wasn't booked on a show.
Yeah. But that was a hard lesson to learn, and but I mean, hell, I made a mistake, and I essentially paid for it. I could have had a good opportunity to hell even, do something good, but hell, I like I said, I fucked it up. Maybe it was, I don't know why I forgot it. It was just excitement, fear, I don't know what it was. Like you said, I don't know what my mistake was, and I don't know why I did it, but I did it, and I had to learn from it.
I had dreams, like you ever had those dreams where your match is next, and like you're not completely dressed, you don't got your boots on, or you can't find your elbow pads, or you're naked or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Hey, I'm next. Like, what's going on? I had that dream a lot.
Yeah, I used to. I had a full-time job when I was working, or whenever I was wrestling, and me and a couple of guys, we'd drive down to Tennessee. I was in St. Louis, in the St. Louis area, and we'd drive down to Tennessee every Friday, and we'd go on like middle of the card, and it's a 4-hour drive from St. Louis to where we were working at in Tennessee. And there was times where if we were off like, a minute late, if we stopped and took too long, like we wouldn't get there in time. And there was plenty of times where I was getting dressed in the vehicle, and as soon as we pull up to the venue, like we're walking out into the, like, walk through the door, walk to the crowd, like, walk into the venue. And there was plenty of times where like, I was like, guys, are we going to fucking make it to this show? Like, what's going on? Like, are they going to just boot us out and just be like, nah, screw these guys? But
yeah, we've all been there for that one.
Yeah. What's some of the, if you had to lay out a top five people that you've ever worked?
Top 5 ever. Oh boy. Hello?
I'm here.
Oh, I thought it went dead, but it was just my heart.
I'm putting you on the spot, Bob.
I mean, if you want to go through top 5, like in history, based on the fame and what people think they are, then that would be like Ricky Steamboat. My favorite, or the best wrestler I ever wrestled was Dean Malenko. I always tell people that.
Right.
He was just the best. He was smooth.
He was
light as a feather, perfect time, and he could drop kick you off the top rope right in your face, and all you felt was the bump you took yourself after,
right.
Boom. He's that good. Flair was awesome. Jerry Lawler was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people, but I'll tell you my
in your just to your personal opinion, not who society, not who the wrestling fans think is the greatest. Who was your personal favorite? Top 5. My
personal favorite. Well, you mean like not that I wrestled, but this personal favorite top 5?
No, your personal favorite that you wrestled.
Oh, well, that's.
Are you there?
Absolute favorite that I ever wrestled was a guy named Rick Ryder. Who lives right down the road from me. I haven't seen him in years, but I trained him to get in the business, and we used to wrestle all over Florida for 10 years on independent shows and main events, semi-main events, and cage matches, chain matches, death matches, tape fist, street fights, any kind you can imagine. We beat the crap out of work, but we had so much fun.
Yeah.
Just bloody brawls that people, I still have people that see me at shows today. They go, oh man, I remember you and Rick fought here and there. It makes you feel good.
Yeah, it does.
He was the absolute most fun that I ever had wrestling.
Yeah.
But only because we were able to do it on a consistent basis, like, weeks at a time for years.
Right. What was you have a I know one of the guys that one of your top favorite of all time guys, and you know who I'm talking about, right? The Funker.
Oh yeah, he's my all-time favorite. He's the reason I wanted to be a wrestler. He's the one that got me hooked in 1975 when I started watching wrestling with a friend that I met here in Florida. It was him going crazy and Gordon Soley calling the action, and I thought I discovered the greatest thing of all time. And even as a kid, I'm thinking, why doesn't everybody like this? This is amazing.
Right.
And was a fan ever since.
What was?
He's awesome.
What was that thing that just triggered in your mind? It was just like, because everybody has a story. Like, I seen. New school guys are like, oh, I remember seeing, Savage Steamboat, or, Eddie Guerrero and this. And, what was it? It was Terry Funk that hit that trigger for you.
Yeah. It's in that era, you only had your like little 1-hour TV shows that were taped more often than not in little studios. In this case, the show was Championship Wrestling from Florida, and it was taped at this really rundown old building called the Sportatorium in Tampa, which is where they taped wrestling in Florida for like 30 years. And what they're going to be doing it again soon. A friend of mine just leased the building to bring back wrestling and create a wrestling Hall of Fame and museum for Tampa.
The exact same building?
Yeah.
Awesome.
But anyways, you can't really pinpoint what drew you to it. To me, it was just the craziness.
Right.
I mean, wrestling had everything. It had over-the-top violence. It had characters that were just not your normal people.
Right.
You know, it had comedy. It had, it was just, and Gordon Soley, who was the greatest announcer of all, or commentator of all time, in my opinion, was able to take all that craziness and make it somehow seem legitimate, even though, when you think back, there was just so much insanity going on. But I just fell in love with the whole thing. Literally, I can remember like the first day thinking, I want to do this someday.
Right. And it's
obviously I failed miserably, but it was a thought.
I mean, it depends on how you think failed. I mean, you're obviously known around the circles in the industry and stuff like that. You might not be a Hulk Hogan, but you have your people that are still fans of you that have been either know you or got to know you. Hell, that's how me and you met is, I remember seeing a video. I don't remember what video it was, but I remember watching old wrestling videos on YouTube. And, I just had a habit at that time back whenever I was in the business. That's back when I first met, first found out about you, is watching old wrestling videos and stuff like that. And then when I was in the business, I went through a little phase where I was trying to, get as many connections, in the business. So I just started going through the list of people, through friends that are in the business, going through their friends list and looking through people that were wrestlers. And then I remember I don't remember whose friends list that you were on that I was friends with. And then I seen your name. I was just like, oh man, I literally just watched a video of him the other day. Maybe I'll hit him up, one day and, get to sit under the learning tree and stuff like that. and that's how I ended up friend requesting you on Facebook, because I was in the business and I wanted to learn. So I figured just being able to, be in the proximity of the internet, he might say something about wrestling and I can learn from that. So,
the best lesson is to not be like me.
What do you mean by not be like?
I have.
What do you mean by not be like you though?
I just mean as far as like if you're in the business, take the stuff that you have to do outside of the business to succeed in the business more seriously.
Right, right.
The one thing that I lacked, I thought I was a decent worker, and I always think back, even today, I appreciate fans that either remember me or maybe they just say nice things about me on my Facebook, whether they mean it or not, doesn't matter, but they say it and it makes you feel good. But to me, the most important thing is how your peers feel about you.
Right.
And I've got a lot of famous wrestling legend friends who will put you over, whether they mean it or not, like Brian Blair and different people. And I joined a group the other day after an invite from Brian Clark, who used to be Adam Bomb in the WWE.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I worked with him back in '95, and he put me over really, was working you and selling that punch, and it was a night off. I mean, that means more to me than anything that a fan who doesn't like me could say.
Right.
They say, "Oh, you're just a job" or whatever. I don't really care what they think. It's what your peers think, And being honored at our Legends lunches that we do every 3 months in Tampa, that Brian Blair hosts, that stuff means the world to me. And other guys like me. Is
the Legend Luncheon is that something that's strictly just for wrestlers, or do fans get to go there or anything like that?
No, it's just for people in the business, not just wrestlers. You can referee if you're part of the business, and also friends and invited guests. You can invite friends of yours and stuff, but it's not open for fans. They don't like people going in asking autographs and taking pictures, because it's really just a camaraderie amongst all the people in the business. Brian Blair started it years ago with Mike Graham and Jack Briscoe, and when Hiro Matsuda and Gordon Soley became ill, they both had cancer.
Right.
Mike and Brian and a bunch of people got together and to cheer Gordon and Hiro up, during the last days of their life, they would do these lunches, and
right.
they just have grown over the years. And we do them every 3 months in Tampa. And, 100 or so show up. We got all kinds of famous people that wrestlers that show up. Ted DiBiase and Greg Valentine and Ronnie Garvin and Brian Blair and a Cuban Assassin, Steve Kern, Bugsy McGraw, all kinds of great old time wrestlers, and a lot of the younger guys that are in the business today. Like to come in, and we honor 2 people at each lunch and give them a nice plaque. And then they also get their name on this giant plaque that we had made. I didn't have it made. Brian Blair did. And once it's full, it's going to go into one of the Wrestling Hall of Fames. I think the one in, where is it? Waterloo, Iowa, I think.
Iowa, so I believe it is, yeah.
They have that one and they have the one in Texas. But I think it's the one in Iowa that our big plaque's going to once it's full. And my name's right at the top in the middle, so how cool is that?
Hey, man, I mean, I know, like I've said it a couple of times already, you were a good worker, and, you did your time and you did your stuff in there. And I think, people even, one thing I've said, like when people talk about, like the Hall of Fames and stuff like that, I don't think a lot of the, the undercard guys, I don't think they get enough recognition. The big guys, they always get the recognition, but some of those undercard guys, there wouldn't be those big stars if it wouldn't have been for those undercard guys.
Yeah, they need to have what they call a Star Maker Award.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of guys like George South, Barry Horowitz, that did the TV stuff for years. Yeah. And they made some of the guys that wouldn't have looked good without their help,
Right.
A lot of guys, especially when they first start out, that were getting pushes like Luger and different people. I mean, Lex got a lot better than when he first started out. Obviously, he was green like anybody else, but he was pushed as a star. So, the guys like me, or not necessarily using me, but guys like Barry Horowitz and George South and stuff, go out there and make them look a lot better than they really were, which helps them get over even more. Then eventually, obviously, they get better. But I don't know. Yeah. We'll probably never get the recognition. Barry Horowitz keeps plugging it on his Facebook page that he needs to be in the Hall of Fame, so maybe something will bust.
Maybe one day that floodgate will pop open. I know St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame. They got a Hall of Fame here in St. Louis. I live a little bit south of St. Louis now. I moved out of the city. I had to get out of the city. I wanted to go back to the country. But I know they do a lot of stuff with a lot of the guys in the area, a lot of the names that were ran through the territory back in the territory days, so, they steady stay, pumping out, I don't know how many they do a year, or how many people they induct a year. I can't remember. I ain't been up there in years. But I know that they have a pretty solid, St. Louis or Hall of Fame, with a lot of names, throughout, like your, I think Race is in there, and there's just so many people. Some of the a lot of the local talent that was big in the St. Louis area during Wrestling at the Chase. A lot of those guys are in it, and they're pretty adamant about getting a wide eclectic group of people in it.
I wrestled at the Kiel Auditorium before. Can I be part of that?
Hey, maybe maybe I'll try to hook you up with one of the guys over there and see if we can't get you. Long drive. See if we can't get you in the St. Louis Hall of Fame.
Although I wouldn't mind going back to Topeka, Kansas, to the Evel Knievel Museum. So
yeah, let's talk about Evel Knievel. I see that you had a lot of Evel Knievel stuff, and you became friends with Evel Knievel. Who was another one of your heroes, right?
He was my. If you want to list all-time heroes, he is the number one.
Yeah.
And then Muhammad Ali and Terry Funk are pretty much tie. As far as those are my main childhood heroes, but Evel was first in the late 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike a lot of people who they tell you never meet your heroes, I've been fortunate enough to meet most of mine, and they all turned out really cool. I never met Muhammad Ali, although I did. I used to have a job where I pick people up at the airport transportation, limo driver, whatever you want to call it. Not a taxi driver, because that's not what we were. We were limo drivers anyway.
Right.
And I was picking some people at the airport once, and off the elevator comes Muhammad Ali. He's in a wheelchair though. And
right.
I was always nice around people, but as soon as he kind of went, holy shit. I was picking up these old couple, and I was like, holy shit. I went, sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but that's Muhammad Ali. And they said, yeah, he was on our flight. He was literally 2 feet next to me in his wheelchair. He was just waking up, and I wanted so bad to like shake his hand and just say, thank you for my childhood.
Wow.
But I didn't want to bother him because he was just waking up and his wife was there. But just being that close to somebody that I always considered as, almost a god on earth.
Yeah.
It's a great feeling. Which is how I always look. Like evil is my God. Everybody's got a picture of Jesus in their house. Well, I got evil. Okay?
you got a picture of evil. You got a lot of stuff of evil.
All over the place.
You got a lot of stuff of evil.
Well, not anymore. If you look at all my great pictures of my museum I used to have in my house with the motorcycles and the life-size rocket and all these things, all that stuff's gone.
Did you where to go to? Did you donate it to the
donate? No,
or give it to them, or did they take it from you? Or
you know what I mean? No, it's all the big stuff like my rocket and my motorcycle and leathers, helmets, pinball machines, slot machines, all that stuff's at the museum in Topeka, Kansas, on an amazing display.
Oh wow! I had an opportunity a couple years ago to meet one of your idols, and it was none other than Terry Funk.
Oh well, yes.
It was when I first moved back to Missouri. There was a Comic-Con down a little, maybe hour south of me. So I went down there just to because I'm kind of a comic book nerd and stuff like that. So I went down there to just look and hang out with friends. And one of the wrestling shows that I used to work for, they were also having a show down there that night. So I was going to stay down there for the show and see some of the old guys and the crew and whatnot. And Terry Funk happened to be there. He was kind of like the special guest at the time. And I came up to the little booth in the Comic-Con section where the wrestling guys, all the wrestlers were. And I just went up there to, say hey to the, the promoter of the company, because I hadn't seen him in years. And I was just like, hey, hey Herb, how you doing? Whatnot? Nice to see you again. And he looks at me, he goes, Static. He goes, you interested in working? I go, what do you mean by working? Like, you talking about like in ring or anything like that? And he's like, no. We're pretty good on that end. He goes, but we need somebody to sit here and take care of Terry. And there was another guy named Cahagas.
I know him.
Yeah, Paul. We need somebody to take care of those guys. Get them what they need. If they need you to do anything, exchange money out.
50 miles from me.
Yeah, so I essentially sat there for probably a good, I'd say 8 hours. A normal shift at a normal job. I sat there for 8 hours and listened to, Terry Funk and Cahagas and a bunch of other guys that were there talk about wrestling and whatnot, and talked to him a little bit back and forth. I wouldn't say that I talked to him a lot, because it was kind of it was one of the people that I've ever met in the wrestling business that, that I was nervous to talk to.
But he's like the nicest guy you'd ever
Oh
meet.
God, he was such a sweet person. But like, I had the luxury of, before I got into business, like I was friends with my buddy Nick, and he had a wrestling store in one of the local malls. And I would go up there and do security with him, for the store, make sure when he'd have guys come in. And I met a lot of people, Batista and Scott Steiner and all kinds of people. He'd have like at his shows, or when he'd bring people in, some days he would bring them in on nights where they had pay-per-views, and he'd rent out a hall, and everybody, all the fans and the wrestler would go there if they'd want to, and they'd all watch a pay-per-view together and everything like that. So I had a lot of opportunities to meet a lot of guys, but I was never nervous or, timid about meeting anybody. And I'd say the first time that I ever met Terry Funk, I was just like, oh man, Terry Funk. I was just like, I was so nervous. It took me a good 2 hours to warm up to both. I like, cause I'd met Cahagas before one time in passing at a show, so I was okay with him, but it was just knowing that I was sitting right next to Terry Funk for that long. It took me a good 2 hours to warm up to him before I actually was just like, talking like, me and you were talking.
That's the difference between meeting the legends and meeting other guys.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a experience to sit there with them, and even though he was just like, "Hey kid, go get me some popcorn."
Go get me some popcorn, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, you egg sucking dog, go get me some popcorn. But
he's awesome.
It was definitely a fun time.
The last show I actually wrestled was I wrestled for Dory Funk Jr. and Ocala back in August of last year, so not quite a year ago. Me and Lenny Boffel teamed up. Dory's great too.
Oh yeah, Dory. That was actually whenever I first got into the business and I was looking at schools. That was actually one of the schools that I was thinking about going to. Was that? But at that time when I started looking at it, I just wasn't too sure. Like I didn't know any, and I was real timid about it. I was just like, I don't know, going down all the way to Florida. I don't really know anybody. I don't have a job. How am I going to support myself? That type of stuff. And then I ended up working with a guy. I ended up getting a job in St. Louis, and I ended up working with a guy that was a wrestler. And that I was just like, oh well, I mean, this opportunity's here, so maybe I'll just take this one. But
Dory's got a great setup.
Oh yeah, Dory's got a great school down there.
TV studio. It's really nice.
What are some of the, things that you think, since we're talking about wrestling and whatnot, what do you think could, everybody's got their gripes about the business and whatnot, what do you think could be better, make the business better? Like, you think it'd ever get back to, a good solid state, or what do you think about what's going on now, with the whole COVID and no crowd? And
I think I can't even watch it. It's nothing against the guys. It's nothing against the business. I try to watch the shows with the little crowds. There's, nobody there.
Yeah.
I just can't get into it. I don't think it's so much of what they're doing as it is who's doing it. I stopped watching the shows after WrestleMania last year. I used to watch the shows every week.
Yeah.
SmackDown, all of them. But I stopped watching them, not this year's WrestleMania, before that, so it's been over a year. But I stopped watching every week. And it's not so much guys. I have nothing against everybody. Everybody loves the business. Everybody wants what's best for the business. Everybody has a passion and a heart, and they're willing to sacrifice pretty much everything, family, life, limb, for the business. But for me, it's just I can't connect with anybody. There's nobody there that I want to see. Now, I was a big Ronda Rousey fan. So when she was on, hey, I want to see Ronda.
Right.
And I still follow her on her little,
on her YouTube show. Yeah.
But there's really nobody there that I'm interested in right now. And it's not, I'm sure they're all going out there and working hard and everything. I still watch the pay-per-views because I have the network. I think it's fantastic.
Right.
So I'll watch the show Sunday that they're going to have, and I'll watch the show the next Sunday. But I just can't watch the weekly shows anymore.
Yeah.
Or I'm just not willing to. I don't know. I could, obviously, but I'm not willing to.
Yeah.
I check out on YouTube and see if there's anything I want to see. I want to see that Nia Jax hurt that Kairi Sane.
Yeah, Kairi Sane, yeah.
It wasn't even Nia's fault. So, to show you how stupid the marks are.
Right.
It's 100% Shane's fault for not putting her hands up. Oh, I'm going to go throw it into steps. I should put my hands up? Oh, okay, let's blame Nia. No, it was her fault.
Yeah, or maybe, maybe take it with a shoulder or something like. I didn't actually see the clip. I heard about it, but.
Or if you're going to put your head into it, put your hands up.
Yeah.
It's like if you're taking a chair shot.
Yeah.
But it was 100% not Nia's fault. And I'm no Nia Jax fan, trust me.
Right. I've seen you talk about on Facebook about, the delicate art of pro wrestling, of, like you said earlier, it's made to look real, but it's not. What do you think about just like, it seems like the workers nowadays, they're extremely athletic and, whatnot. And but it just seems like they're just more willing to take more risk and be more insane. and the longevity that, you know, like it always bothers me. Like when I see guys do stuff and I'm just like, ah, man, like, why are you doing that? Like, don't you realize like you're knocking like, you know, the more crazy that you get, you know, you're essentially ending your own career quicker.
Yeah, I don't think what they should do is take a look at the guys who didn't do half what they're doing in the condition they're in. I go to the CAC, Cauliflower Alley Club, almost every year. I didn't go this year because, well, I didn't want to. But
yeah, a couple issues there.
Most years
I've heard about them.
Most years I go. I've been going for like since 2015 or whatever. But you see a lot of the old timers. I mean, you know, the older wrestlers, and they're all crippled up. They're all, you know, in some form of disarray because of the business, and those guys didn't do half of the crazy stuff that the guys do today. You can only imagine how somebody like a Jeff Hardy or heck, any of those guys are going to be like if they make it to 60.
Yeah.
I get you. Well, a lot of people when you're young and I did a lot of stupid stuff when I was young in wrestling. I bounced down bleachers, took backdrops on the floors. We didn't have paddings around the ring, especially in independent shows. But I regret it now. Like I said, I'd live it over because I was young. You don't think about those things. But if you could think back, like I took a backdrop from Raul Mata on the floor back in like 1985.
Yeah.
And then hurt myself there, got in the ring, caught another backdrop, hurt myself again, had to come out 2 matches later and could barely walk. And my back is still screwed up today from that one bump.
Wow.
So you think back of the dumb things you did, even though if you get 200 people to go, oh, you know, oh, that's fun to hear, but, you know, but the guys today that do, I think people should spend less time trying to convince themselves it's real and go back to trying to convince your audience it's real.
Yeah.
Because it's still possible if you're good enough.
Right.
The people want to be convinced. The people want to believe. But if you go out there and do stupid crap, you know, they're not going to believe it anymore. You know, I mean,
yeah.
Who can explain what's going on today? I think everything is just going back. Everything's going insane is what's happening.
Yeah, everything's going insane. Everything, not just wrestling, but everything in general is going insane right now. Yeah.
That AEW match, that Stadium Stampede. And if you want to say, okay, it was entertaining from here to here, but it had nothing to do with pro wrestling, and if you want to use that as the example of pro wrestling, then that's a joke because it was an absolute joke.
Yeah.
I mean, they did some of the stupidest crap ever. Matt Hardy gets dunked under the water 3 times. He comes up as a different character each time, dressed differently. I mean, come on, you're not even trying to convince your audience it's real anymore.
Yeah, well,
that's fine if you're entertained by that. I have nothing against that. But when you're a company that promised you the complete opposite,
right?
How can you support that?
Yeah, and I have a handful of people that watch my show that are really big fans of AEW, and I've talked to them. I'm just like, look, you know, like when they first came around, when the rumblings first started about AEW, they said, you know, they're going to do so many different things. They're not going to do, you know, they're not worried about WWE. They're not going to focus on them. They're not going to do this. It's just going to be a pure wrestling show. And then, you know, on almost every show that they have to have, you know, hell, I even think they said that they're not going to sign WWE guys at one point in time. And it was just like every show that I've watched, I haven't watched all of them, but the shows that I've watched, there's always some type of reference, you know, some type of, you know, little jab. And it's just like, what are y'all doing? Like you said that you guys were just going to be the pure wrestling show for the wrestling fan, you know, like, or now you're trying to, it's almost like they're trying to make it, you know, WWE or WWF versus WCW again.
Yeah. You know, in the circumstances we're in now with this virus and uncertainty and all that, you can almost give them a pass for some of the stuff they're doing because at this point,
yeah. It's a crapshoot.
Basic wrestling match is you're with no people there and stuff. That's hard to do to begin with.
Yeah.
So if you're giving people something different, something that would be considered somewhat original, I get the mindset. Doesn't necessarily, but again, some of the best plans ever turn out to be crap, and some of the stuff you go, why would you ever do that? Turns out to be magic. So
right.
It's one of those things with wrestling. It's like anything. You throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Basically, you know, they try different things. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it.
Yeah.
And I don't condemn anybody for liking it. I mean, you have a right to like what you want, but don't sit there and like something just because it's AEW.
Right.
Like, I don't like everything the WWE. They do something stupid, I'll say they did it.
Oh, yeah.
Stupid. I don't do it anymore so much, but I try to focus on the positives and things.
Yeah.
Unless something's really bad, then I'll just make a comment.
Yeah, I get reamed a lot by people because, I kind of nitpick about stuff that AEW does, but they're like, I don't ever see you do it about WWE, and I'm just like, guys, like, well, when you have a sea of millions and millions and millions of people constantly, every single day of the week, 24 hours a day, talking crap about WWE, I was like, what's the point in doing it? Because everybody's criticizing them already.
Right.
And that's why I nitpick about, like, one thing that I nitpicked about AEW just a couple months ago, where it was the teleportation thing of the Matt Hardy thing. I was just like,
that was horrible.
It was absolutely horrible. The editing was horrible in it.
The commentary, Tony Schiavone, he's teleporting. Tony Schiavone is absolutely the worst commentator of all time if you take into context what he is today.
Right. And I told him, I go, they're doing a one-off thing, and they're never, ever, 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 ever going to be able to do something like that again. So you essentially shot yourself in the foot, because you can no longer, when crowds do come back, you're never going to be able to do that spot again. If you wanted to make it look like Matt Hardy was able to teleport around the arena, why didn't you just do the old school type of way? Lights out, lights flicker, pop up here, pop up there. It's a tried and true, and it's been tested millions and millions of times.
But then, it goes back to what I just said. You try things, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Although when you consider something done and it's not live, you can go back and watch that and go, holy crap, this is shit. We can't air this on national television. Oh, hell, go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah.
So that makes,
Yeah.
But like when they were doing some kind of a fight before where Matt Hardy was in a freezer or something.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Tony Schiavone's going, he's come out of the freezer. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It's the worst stuff I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
No offense, Tony, but hey, something suck.
Hey.
And I get it. They'd all come back and say, you're a nobody, you're nothing, we're making money. I get that, but that doesn't make it good.
Right. And I mean, that's the way it is today. Like, people try to run people down, and it's just, it's almost like people can't take constructive criticism nowadays. Like, I get criticized all the time about everything. If I say something, because I'm pretty political. I'm pretty sure you've seen my Facebook post, and I'm going ham on everything and anyone, and I get criticized so much, and it's just like, I don't even care anymore. Like, I just laugh about it now. I'm just like, you guys, well, I mean, think what you want to think. I don't really care.
In this day and age, you can't even be positive. Like, when I watch a show now, if I say anything about it, I usually focus on the positive.
Yeah.
And you can't even do that without getting criticized for it.
Oh, you like this? This was horrible.
That was great. And people, oh no, that sucked. They want to argue with you. I just block people from now. I don't even bother anyone. Like, tell me the weather's. Don't agree with me on the weather. I'll block you. I don't care.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like I don't even block people. I'm just like,
I always block. I get tired of it. That's like they talk about cyberbullying stuff. There's no such thing as cyberbullying unless you allow it. Every platform from Instagram to Facebook to Twitter, you can block anybody you don't like. You can block them for looking wrong.
Right.
You definitely can block them for saying things you don't like, especially about yourself. And if you allow it, well, then however you handle it, and that's can go to that girl who killed herself. Hey, I'm sorry she killed herself, but she allowed herself to be taken in by the hate.
Yeah.
You can block it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll block anybody who disagrees with me or cuts me down or says something, Like I posted something about, if you don't support the cops, don't expect one to come help you when you need it,
Right.
And some guy was just all over me. Oh, blah, 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 you're a racist, you're this. I'm like, what are you, insane?
Yeah.
You're racist because I said support the cops? I mean, good Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't support the bad cops, but the reality is there's not that many bad cops compared to good cops. It's just they get all the publicity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's something I was talking to a buddy of mine just before we went on the show, and I was talking about trying to find commonalities. Most people, everybody's like, a bad cop is a bad cop. Fuck him. If he's a bad guy, bad person, most people would arguably agree with you. You know, like yeah, this guy's done some like the officer that killed Mr. Floyd. That guy is a piece of shit. Like everybody that I seen throughout social media was in agreement with it. Everybody, right. Even from all spectrums of life. From my conservative friends to my more liberal friends to even some of the the weird socialist friends that I have. Everybody was in agreement. The guy was a dickbag. What he did was fucking heinous, and all of the other words that you can think of that, pertains to being extremely horrible and bad. And everybody was just like, yeah, this motherfucker should fry, essentially.
But to that argument, I don't believe the guy did that with the intentions to kill him. It just worked out that way.
Yeah.
He may have been putting pressure on him because he's an asshole and he was like trying to show him who's boss, but I don't think for a minute that he intended to kill him or thought he would die.
Yeah. I mean,
I could be on the force for 20 years and all of a sudden decide, well, I think I'll kill this guy and ruin my entire life. I'm only 40.
Yeah.
What's 100 years in jail? In no way he was thinking that.
Well, I mean, we can't, like I've tried to explain to people, like we don't know. I don't know what was in that guy's heart. I don't know what was in his mind at the time of the thing. And all I know is the outcome was.
I guarantee you what's in his mind now.
The outcome was extremely bad.
Getting up that day.
Huh?
I'll guarantee you that cop regrets getting up that day.
Oh yeah, I guarantee you that. There's
no way he went to work that day with the idea that he's going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
But what do I know? I happen to be very good friends with the cop. His name is Joe Malenko. Yes,
yeah.
Joe Malenko, who is the brother of Dean Malenko, the son of the great Malenko, and he's a cop in Tampa.
Right.
And it was also a fantastic wrestler. I'm also honored to say I had his last match.
Yeah.
Me and him wrestled a couple years ago on a show at the old Armory in Tampa.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, he's a cop in Tampa, and he's a really good guy.
Yeah. That's where we got to, I think people in society today, we need to find those commonalities, there's dickwads in every circle of life, call out the dickwads and, bring in close to the people that are actually good people.
But if you want to get really controversial, the reality is that the majority of the people that are killed in police custody are not innocent people. They're not upstanding citizens. They were resisting arrest. They were in the right place at the wrong time or the wrong place at the right time, whatever you want to say, doing wrong. And even if they weren't doing wrong the day they died, you look in their history and they didn't deserve to live.
Yeah.
That's the way most of them are. I'm not saying that about this situation because I don't know this guy's history. And I'm not talking about color. I'm talking about anybody. Black, white, green, blue, purple, whatever color you can be. Most of the people that are killed in the custody of the police or in the line of duty are scumbags. Not all, but most.
Well, that's like I said, it's, some are bad, some are good, so what are we going to do?
There was a guy in Texas. A few years ago that was put to death, and they found out later he was innocent of the crime he was convicted of. But at the end of the day, he was a rapist. He had beaten people with guns. He had armed robbery convictions. So he may not have been killed because he was guilty of the murder he was convicted of, and he was put to death. But at the end of the day, you got rid of a scumbag.
Yeah.
Hoo-hoo.
Well, now that
here's the reality: don't do things wrong, and you'll never have in your life.
Yeah, I've been on the wrong side. I've been on the wrong side of the law a couple of times, and got tuned up a couple of times. I've
been arrested a couple of times.
But you are right. You just gotta know how to.
You know what I did the 2 times I was arrested?
No, Bob, what's it?
I said, yes, sir, no, sir. Put the handcuffs on, sir. I didn't resist. I didn't fight them. I know they can claim it's white privilege, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, if you do not give them a confrontation, they're not going to give you a confrontation in most cases.
Yeah. I've told the story. I had a cop growing up. There was a guy named Joe Pitts. I'm perfectly fine with putting his name out there because the guy was a dickbag. But, I was a teenage kid, I was a, punk rock kid, the weirdo freak kid that you that you would see and be like, oh man, that kid's a bad apple. And this guy, he would just, anytime I was in town, I lived a little outside of town. Anytime I would come into town, that guy was on my ass all the time. And then years go by, but the guy harassed me all the time, pulled me over all the time just to be like, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I'm just driving through town, taking cruises through town. I lived in a small town. And I caught him one time. I ended up, after I, got out of school and whatnot, I lived on the same block that he lived in. And I caught him smoking weed. I caught him smoking weed out on his porch one day. And I was just like, ha. I was like, all that time that you that you harassed me and hounded me, and like, got physical with me and everything like that. And all this time you're that one asshole guy that sat there and told me not to do the stuff, and you're sitting there doing it yourself.
Well, that's the way most people are. They don't practice what they
Yeah.
preach.
And from that point on, I had him in my hand because I was like, dude, like, remember all those times that you tuned me up and everything? You got a little pushy with me. You got a little too tight. Putting those cups on a little too tight. Even if I wasn't being ignorant, I might get mouthy. Say something smart. Like don't rub my ass when you're touching me. Like you got your hand in your pocket and they're rubbing on your butt, and it's like, hey man, don't touch my ass. Type stuff. And I told him, I was like, hey, you remember all that stuff? I go, man, I wonder if your squad would be cool with you doing all that stuff, and also being, the guy, also being good with the guy, that's sitting there smoking the weed too. And
they probably get their supply from evidence.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I would. What the heck?
Yeah, I was just like,
I gotta admit, if I was the cop and there was this big drug bust and there was $480,000 in cash, guess what? There'd only be $380,000. Oops.
Yeah.
I swear, it's not.
Where did that 100,000 go? I don't know.
387.
Where did that go?
Cops are like so underpaid for what they got to put up with.
Yeah. I can see that. I can agree to that. I can definitely agree to that.
I mean, hey, they're willing to do it. It's like teachers bitching about their pay. Oh, we don't get paid enough. Well, I don't know about you, but how long you been teaching? 27 years. So for 27 years, you haven't got paid what you think you have. Why are you still a teacher?
Yeah.
You get into teaching knowing what your pay is. Don't bitch about it.
Yeah, I mean,
same with wrestling, for God's sakes.
Yeah, I mean,
what makes you be a wrestler if you're not making what you think you should make? Get out.
Yeah, go make what I've told people. I was just like, I work at a restaurant right now. It's kind of like it's my full-time job, but I use it as just a way to get the time to do what I need to do to get to where I want to go. And people are like, oh, you're only making $10 an hour. You could be making so much more money and you could do this and that. I'm just like, yeah, but if I did all that, like I'm cool with what I'm making right now because it gives me the ability to do some of the stuff that I like to do. Like I like to do the podcast and I like to live stream and I like to make YouTube videos and sell stuff.
That's the main thing. As long as you like what you're doing,
so I don't have a problem in it. It seems like I have more friends and family that get mad at me because they're like, oh, you could be making so much more. Why don't you do it? I'm just like, man, because I'm good. I'm comfortable where I'm at. I don't have to worry about everything. My bills are all paid.
Yeah, if I'm not borrowing money from you, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, just let me do what I do, man.
If I start having a handout, then maybe I'll consider your request.
Yeah, it's funny because I have people that come and ask me for money, and I'm just like, man, I'm not the richest guy in the world. Like, I'm okay, but like, when you're coming asking me for money, that's a problem because like you guys are saying that I'm not making enough, but you also are at the same time asking me for money.
I love eBay.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I got off of eBay and I started on a website called Etsy, and then I attached a website to it. So I've been selling for the last year now, selling stuff straight through my website. I sell all kinds of stuff, wrestling stuff, movies, DVDs, action figures, old programs. I got a bunch of stuff from Japan, old wrestling memorabilia from Japan.
You get a good response that way?
It's doing okay. Like I'm doing pretty good. It's definitely a lot harder than eBay. because you just gotta grind on it a lot more. You got to kind of work it like a normal website, you know.
I don't want that.
Yeah, it's.
I sold a 1978 wrestling magazine that cost $1 for $200 the other day on eBay.
Oh my god, you're still posting stuff on eBay?
Magazines.
I know I follow your little eBay thing that you have on there, but I haven't, like, I still buy stuff from eBay, but like the last thing I sold on there, I would say about a month and a half ago. About a month ago. I was kind of hard up on money because the whole COVID told me that I was not an essential worker, so I essentially had to be a peasant and ask for money.
I wonder if the government doesn't realize that everybody is an essential worker, because it's kind of essential that you keep a roof over your head.
Yeah.
For some reason, the people you pay to keep that roof over your head considers your pay essential.
Yeah.
So everybody is an essential worker.
I made that argument too and got chewed out for it. Oh, no, my job is essential. Well, I mean, no, my job is essential. It's essential for me. Oh, so you don't care about everybody else then? No, I just care about myself. Sorry.
That's the way it should be. You're an American. Don't care about anybody but yourself. That's the way it should be.
Like I care about me. I care about me first. I care about me first.
That's right. We're Americans. We kick people when they're down. We care about ourselves only. God bless America.
But I ended up selling my Xbox One X because it was the thing that I knew it was the most valuable thing that I could get the most.
I have one of those.
That I could get the most money for, right away. And I was like, later if all this COVID stuff dies down, I can get me another one if I want one. And
the new one's coming out at the end of the year. That's better.
But I ended up selling that for something like $300, I think it was.
I bought the WWE 2K20 yesterday.
How was that?
That's how stupid I am.
How was that? Have you played it yet?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed it. I mean, there's glitches here and there, but I enjoyed it. I'm a big Hulk Hogan fan, so for me, having Hulk back in the game since 2015, I think he was taken out like the years after that.
Yeah, the whole
his entrance alone is cool for me.
Yeah,
because I'm a mark.
Yeah. No, like I haven't played.
I uploaded a bunch of Terry Funk T-shirts to my page tonight that I'm going to go make a Terry Funk later.
Nice. They should.
Till 4 in the morning.
I think WWE. I think it would be fun to have WWE. Because they have the whole online thing, and I think it would be cool to have some of those older guys, some of the older legend guys. If there was a way to make in game, like in game is like buyable, like say your Terry Funks or your Brunos or even some of the other guys, like Masuda or any of the older guys, just old wrestlers in general. I think it would be so fun to be able to play with guys like that, like your Luthezes and stuff like that. I think that would be freaking awesome an awesome element.
People create those. There's a lot of great creators out there.
Yeah. I think it would be a lot different if it was something that WWE produced. I think it would be a lot cooler.
Terry Funk was in the game maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while since I played an actual WWE game. Kind of got out of them when they changed all the controls around. I
wasn't going to buy this year's because it was supposedly like the worst ever, but my kid works at Walmart, and I was at Walmart yesterday. I was like, it's only $29. So I went and found my kid and I said, hey, let me use your discount card. Boom. So I saved a little money there. I've been having fun with it. What do I care?
Did your son ever get into wrestling?
Yeah, he worked for a while. I trained him and a friend of mine in our backyard. We bought a ring way back 15 years ago. Not 15, 15, holy crap, 15 years ago. Wow. He didn't stay long. He didn't like the politics and that mindset that you have to help set up the ring and take it down. That's bullshit mindset. I don't care what anybody says. Kiss my ass. If I wanted to be on the damn ring crew, I'd have wanted to be on the ring crew. If I want to be a referee, I'd be a referee. I want to be a manager, I'd be a manager. You know what I wanted to be? Wrestler.
Yeah.
I trained to be a wrestler, and paying my dues was getting in my car every day and driving hundreds of miles to work. Kiss my ass on the rest of it.
Did Malenko? Did they train you like that? Whenever, because there's a big difference, from whenever I came in, from where you came in. Did they make you do stuff like that back in the day?
No, but Malenko, when he had his school, he would run a lot of little independent shows here and there to give us students, experience in front of crowds and stuff.
Right.
In those days, obviously, you didn't have the internet, so you had to kind of just meet a guy at a show, and he liked the way you worked. And goes, hey, I'm doing a show, next month. You want to be on it? Yeah, sure. And it would just kind of avalanche for there, and you do show to, get your name out there.
Right.
But in that era, like in the 80s, early 80s, very few rings. There wasn't a lot of rings around.
Right.
They had a couple of guys that had rings, and they just rented them to the different promoters. But as part of the rent, like you pay $400, $300 for the ring, part of that deal was they'd bring their crew and set it up, or they'd just find marks to help set it up and let them in the show free, or however they would do it. Very rarely did you see the wrestlers helping. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it wasn't expected. You weren't like shunned or frowned upon. Oh, he doesn't want to pay his dues. He's an asshole. He thinks he's above it. That's bullshit.
That's something that I did quite a bit. Whenever there was one the main company that I worked for here in St. Louis, they had a ring crew. So they had a guy come in where they rented a ring, and they set up the ring and everything like that. And if I happened to get there early or whatever at the show, depending on what I was doing, I might go help them. I'd be like, hey, guys, the ropes need to be a little bit tighter here, da da da.
Yeah, that's fine.
That type of stuff. But then the other company that I worked for right across the river, which they were kind of like partners, one was in St. Louis and one was right across the river in Illinois, and they worked kind of hand in hand with each other, ran storylines back and forth with each other. Now that guy, he owned his ring, a guy named Herb Simmons, a good old guy. And he,
that perverted guy with a bald head.
Who?
Herb Simmons?
No.
I'm thinking of Eric Sims. Never mind.
No. Herb's a pretty good guy. He's been around the business in the Midwest area. Came up right after. I don't know if he was ever a wrestler, but I just know I know he's the promoter of that company, and he's been around it for 40 plus years. He was friends with all the guys from, wrestling at the Chase and stuff like that, and knew Munchnick and all of those people. And, but I mean, and he had his own ring, and, guys that would get there early, or guys that would, after the show, would end up taking the ring down. And I always did it just to save face, because like, that's kind of what we were taught, like help out, do this, and I was like, well, I don't want to.
You know why you're taught that? It's free labor.
Yeah.
It's free labor.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
I could see it.
And it's great if people want to help, but it shouldn't be a requirement. You shouldn't be like frowned upon if you want to actually live your life or something.
Right.
Like that's what my kid used to just get tired of, because, okay, he's got to be at a show in Fort Myers, 50 miles away. He's got to be at work in the morning at 8. But they want them to stay over until the show's over and help take the ring down so they don't get out of there until 1. Forget that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my mindset
tired of it.
Yeah, my mindset started to change whenever I started to venture out from the core area where I was, the St. Louis and the Ellen, right across the riverside. Whenever I started going to other shows and everything, and I would get to the show, I would do my match, stay until we got paid. And then we'd leave, and I was just like, well, why don't we do that shit here? Like, why are we only doing it here? Like, it's not making sense to me. Like, like if we're supposed to do this, why are we doing it here? And my buddy was always like, oh, I mean, we got shit to do. We got to go to work the next morning. We're 4 hours away. And
exactly,
and then that's where my mindset started to change about a lot of the politics stuff. And I was just like, I don't think I'm going to do that as much anymore. But when I was in the gym, our training gym that we had, like, I was always, adamant about, if you're going to come down there and train, fucking clean up after yourself. I'm not going to clean up after you. If you make a mess, you clean it up. And that's because I was one of the first people in the building all the time. I was always the first in and the last to leave. I had a key for the building. So, I'm just like, I'd get there early before everybody showed up, and I would mop the rings out and everything like that. And that's the way I said that I paid my dues is, I'm taking care of the place where we train, cause I paid my dues on that because, 3 days a week training, roughly 3 days a week training. And I did that every single day. And I would be there from, 5 PM to 10 PM, be there before everybody. And I'd clean up and I'd mop the ring out before we get there, or before everybody shows up. And then after the show was, after we'd get done training and everybody was gone, I'd remop the ring again. But I was always adamant. I was just like, hey, you assholes. I was like, That's your trash there. That's your tape. Clean up your fucking mess. I'm not picking up after you because I'm already doing everything else.
I mean, yeah, I always was definitely, I took care of my spot. I never left a mess. But again, everybody has a different mindset. That's something you'll never be able to convince other people.
Oh, yeah.
That, to change their mind, paying your dues, blah, blah, blah. That's my mindset was, now again, if Malenko would have asked me, he would have said, Bob, we want you guys there to help set up the ring, take it down. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat. But it wasn't expected, and you never once asked.
Right.
But, I always considered paying my dues. I used to drive 2.5 hours to Tampa on Tuesday and Thursday and 2.5 hours home. That's before the interstate opened up, to get my training with Lincoln. Sometimes I drive all the way to Plant City, which is the same distance as Tampa, just a little different direction.
Right.
To train at Malenko's other school on the weekends. And, you did that for as long as you had to do it to have your, to learn.
Right.
I considered that paying my dues. And then I considered actually going to the shows, showing up on time, doing what I was told, not having an ego. Yes, sir, no, sir, and treating everybody with respect, treating my opponent with respect, and going on down to the next show. That, in my world, in my mind, is paying my dues.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see it there. I guess, that's
I'm not going to help hang up posters and pass out flyers. You want me to call a radio station and do an interview before the show? Fine. But I'm not, I'm not the promoter, not the ring crew, not the referee, not the concession man. I'm the wrestler. Like Baby, do you know who Baby Doll is? She used to be on WCW.
Yeah.
Tully Blanchard. Dusty. Yeah. This argument comes up once in a while, and I always just like to say, well, I never had to help set in the rings. And most people are like, well, you're an asshole, whatever. So I don't even know the story. And Baby Doll always sticks up and says, what would Dusty have thought if people got to the show and Tully and I were setting the ring up, or Arn and Magnum were helping set the ring up,
Yeah,
great argument.
You do make a good point there. Like,
granted, they're bigger stars, but the point is, and again, if you want to set the ring up, fine, but don't treat people. Again, students, if you're just starting out, whatever you want to do, but there's guys that think you should do it for years.
Right. I think I actually I do agree with it. Like. I'm always big on learning stuff. Hell, I've learned a lot already, just by talking to you for the last hour or so.
Really?
Yeah, just like I'd never actually thought of it like that. Like the way that you just put that. What would you think if you had the chance that you go into a venue and you see guys like Dusty Rhodes or Ric Flair or hell, even Bob Cook, sitting there. Putting up wrestling rings and handing out the flyers and stuff like that. I never actually thought about that. And it's a really good point.
You go to independent shows, and even though the guys aren't, stars or anything, but I've been to a lot of independent shows where they're setting up the ring and they're taking forever, and the fans are already coming in, and here you are. You got, the good guys, the bad guys, they're all helping set up the ring. I mean, that's just a horrible look.
It is, yeah. Yeah, that's something I always had an issue with, Like I had a big issue with that whenever I was wrestling. It was just like there was an opportunity that I got, to turn heel and everything like that. And I after that, I wanted to have nothing to do with, being out in the eyes of the fans. Like, I didn't want to go out there and, get a drink or, go up and grab some popcorn or go out there and sit and look or watch or
if you do, don't be a nice guy.
Yeah.
People say that kayfabe is dead. You know who killed kayfabe? The boys.
Yeah, the boys did.
McMahon didn't kill kayfabe. The boys killed kayfabe because they no longer care. It could be brought back.
Yeah.
You just have to. Everybody has to do this. Take part. And I used to love that part. You go to a show. I was a bad guy. I wouldn't be nice to people.
Yeah.
I wouldn't kiss babies and want a picture. Leave me alone. You treat them like crap. Doesn't matter if you're the first man or the last man. If you're a bad guy, I'm not being a nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, I
learned that from Terry Funk.
Yeah, I mean, a bad guy's a bad guy. Like that's something that always it did bother me. Working, and I would see guys. They're the heels and they're supposed to be getting all this heat from everybody, and then they're down there at intermission, selling merchandise and
right.
and being nice to everybody. And I did that like a couple of times. I would go down. At one of the venues I was at, it had a bar, and I would always go down into the bar, and I would always go get me a tequila sunrise at this venue because me and one of the announcers would always drink tequila sunrises after I was done with my match and everything like that. and I'd just sit there and like, I remember people trying to acknowledge me and talk to me, and it's people that I knew because, you know, I'd been there so often, you know, and I was a babyface beforehand. So you get that rapport with people, you know, as the babyface, but then you got to flip that heel magnet on, and you kind of just got to be a dick to people. And that was something that I always,
more fun.
Yeah, I always had an issue, like, you know, like it wasn't an issue of being mean to people, because I don't have a problem doing that. But it was just the fact that it would be like, and then people would come back and like, oh, why are you doing that? You know, I'm just like, I'm the fucking heel, you know, like, and I would get heat from, you know, I would get heat from everybody, you know, not just like, not just the fans, you know, but like I would be being a dick to everybody, the boys included, like, I'm the fucking heel, like, you know, it's not me being an ego. It's not me having an ego. It's just me being in my fucking character. If I'm at the show, I'm in my character. You know, like I don't care about you guys. I remember one instance we were at the show, and it was an outside show. It was in this little, like, I forget the name of the area. It was in St. Louis, and it was like a special event type thing that they did, where they set it up in this, you know, kind of like rundown kind of, you know, hood area, and they'd essentially have the show in the middle of the street, you know, like they'd block off four areas of the street, and the ring would be in the middle of it. And I remember this one little kid walked up to me after the show one day, and he goes, "You're not really hurt. I know you're not." And he walked up to me, and I go, "You don't think I'm hurt?" And I go, "I might not be, but you're going to be really hurt if you keep talking to me like that." And there were some people around, you know, like normal adults, and why are you doing that? God, you know, like, and it's just like, and then it got back to the promoter that I was ignorant and everything like that, because I said some off color stuff, you know, like, you know, I'll beat the shit out of your little retarded ass type stuff. and the people got mad at me, and I was just like, man, isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Like, you know, like, what's the whole idea of like especially if you're a heel, like, why do you want to be liked by the fans? Like, shouldn't it be your job to do everything that you can to not be liked by them? That's kind of the whole point of it.
Well, nowadays, all the heels and the baby faces, they mingle around during intermission and try to sell their crap at the independent shows. And so, you know, in the old days, the baby faces would share some of their payoff that they made for their T-shirts and picture sales with the heels they were feuding with, because they know they couldn't go out and make that extra money. So they would share the payoff with them. I didn't. Way of saying thank you, because the baby faces were over the way they were to be able to sell that merchandise because of how the heels, you know, were the heels.
Did heels
Rock and Roll Express would sell a bunch of T-shirts and pictures? They'd give the Midnight Express some of their money.
Oh, nice. Did heels back in the day? Did they do any type of merchandise type stuff like that, like baby faces would?
No,
like pictures or anything like that.
Share back in those days. And I remember I was with Terry Funk once in Miami, standing behind a curtain watching the show, and we were just talking. He's goofing around, telling me a story, and some kid came up and asked for his autograph. And Terry was real mean to him, told him to get lost. And I said to Terry, it's like back in '89, I said, "Terry, man, why'd you treat that kid like that?" And he said, "Bob, if these people see me back here being nice to a kid, they're not going to believe I'm the badass I'm going to portray 5 minutes when I go out."
Right.
I was like, damn, that made perfect sense to me. I was like, perfect sense, you know?
Yeah.
From what I heard from Terry Funk, he like turns into the heel character as soon as he gets in town.
Right.
And he treated everybody that day, and he did other shows too, but like we were talking in the hallway, and he's sitting on a forklift, and some security guard came over and told Terry to get off the forklift. This is in '89.
Right.
Like 2 days before he attacked Flair at the Wrestle War in '89.
Okay.
And Terry was in great shape at this point. And Terry just looked at the guy and said, "Go to hell," you know, and didn't move. And the guy just kind of like shamefully walked away. He just treated everybody who wasn't part of the show like subhumans. He didn't go out to people to start trouble, but he just wasn't polite to people, you know.
Right.
I thought it was the greatest thing ever. I'm like, wow, that's awesome.
There was always this guy. He was kind of like the local, you know, wrestling, you know, kind of like indie rag type guy. He had like a webpage and everything like that. And I remember I used to give him so much grief. 'Cause, you know, he wrote an article, or, you know, it was kind of like shit talking me online and stuff like that. And this was when I turned heel and everything like that. And there was just times where I would see him, in passing at shows and stuff. And like, I would just give him so much grief. And like, there was a good point in time for like several years after I quit, retired, quit, or whatever you want to call it, that, he would still talk smack about me. And then he just, over the course of a period of time, he eventually understood it. Like, I remember one time I had a pair of brass knuckles, like a legit pair of brass knuckles. And I was over in Illinois, and he made he was videoing the show, and he would put up clips on his YouTube page that he had. And during the show, he noticed that I had those brass knuckles, and he was all like, he's like, brass knuckles are banned in Illinois. This guy, he shouldn't be, and he wasn't like playing into it. Like, he was literally like actually pissed off that I had them. This guy should be arrested. He shouldn't be, carrying illegal weapons and stuff like that. And like, it was just situations like that. It was just like the guy, I didn't even have to do anything, like, and I would never really say anything to him, but if I seen him say something in passing about me, I would always like just make some type of snarky comment to him, something like, just, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I just do what I got to do. If somebody needs punched with a pair of brass knuckles, that's what I'm going to do, type stuff. Nothing bad, nothing ignorant, just kind of playing it up. And this guy, like, he legit hated me forever. And like, even on shows that I wasn't even on, the dude would shit talk me. It was just like, why are you doing that? Like, I just never understood. Like, he actually had it out for me.
That can still be done if people cared enough. But you see, like, it was a week ago where they did that thing on AEW with the pull apart with Tyson and Jericho and all that silliness.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of corny.
And not long after, there's pictures of them all just playing pussy, kissy face on Instagram and stuff. They're all together. And so,
yeah.
Why do that? What's the point? You want to take a picture with Tyson? I get it. So would I. But I wouldn't be doing it right after I portrayed him as somebody wants to kick my ass and I want to kick his.
Right. Yeah, that's something that bothers me. That bothers me about wrestling today. It's just like, why are you doing, like, it kind of shoots yourself in the foot, and the fans always complain about, it's not like it was in, the 80s, and it's not like it was in the 90s, and the Heat and bad guys and this and that. I mean, everything that they say, and it's just like, well, like, this is why, like, this is why that you don't have that, because you like sharing the videos, and you like seeing all the guys buddy and best friends with each other, and like, you got this guy that you have this deep-seated hatred for on the show, but then like, you're playing a video game with them on YouTube later on, and you're the best of friends, and it's just like the realism, or the where it was realism back in the day, where you actually believed, like, you believed back in the day when like, say, when Flair and Dusty were going at it, like, you believed that they actually hated each other.
I can remember I was in a dressing room once in Jacksonville, Florida, at the Coliseum, and as a kid, you grew up knowing or thinking that Abdullah Butcher was a killer. And,
yeah.
Remember pictures of him carving Dusty up in the magazines and stuff in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And even as in 1987, I'm sitting in the dressing room and Dusty comes in, which is fine. He says, "Hello to Bugsy McGraw," whatever. Then Abdullah comes in. First time I ever met Abdullah. And all of a sudden, instantly, I become the 14-year-old Mark.
Right.
I'm just like, holy shit, what are they going to do? I instantly envision, Abdullah carving Dusty up, and they meet in the middle of the room. Dusty gives Abby a kiss on the cheek, and they hug. And I was like, wait a minute now, what just happened? Even as a wrestler,
yeah.
What did I just see?
What did I just witness?
It was fantastic, but at the same time, you're marking out, because, like, man, Dusty and Abdullah, I remember watching them, as a kid and seeing them in the magazine, and all of a sudden, kiss him on the cheek. What's up, baby?
Yeah, oh, it's like a little piece of you dies. It's just like, oh.
No, I didn't think it was so much that. It was just, you just kind of like fixated on what's gonna. Oh my God, are they gonna go at it? Even if you know they're not because you're in the business. But And then Dusty gives him a kiss on the cheek, and I was like, wow, that was cool.
Yeah. But I think that's
what I like about that kid, what is it, MJF or
MJ. Oh, my God, so phenomenal.
He's I don't watch him a lot, but I see the little things I see about him outside the business where he treats people like crap. I love that.
Oh, my God.
That picture he took with some 10-year-old kid and he's shooting a bird at the kid's face. And the
so great.
Actually complained
to
Cody, and Cody went, hey, if you come to our events and you want to get a picture with MJF or meet him, you're going to get MJF. That's like great response.
Yeah. And that's like, I wish more people would take it. Like, I wish more people would take it that serious, like the kid, he pulls no punches. Like he's the same that you'd see him on a show that he is in person if you meet him. And I think that's a fantastic mindset to have. And like, it's one thing, like one of the big issues that I've had with AEW is like, I could understand when they started out, having Jericho as the champion and everything like that. I could understand it, because, you want to have that platform of, to have somebody that's known in there. But like, there's so many guys that's on that roster that I feel that could take up that mantle of, a champion and stuff like that they don't use. They just keep using all the old WWE guys. And I feel like, and it is one of my big complaints that I've had with them. I'm just like, well, you guys said that you're going to be different from WWE, but so far your only champions that you've ever had are old WWE guys, and hell potentially might be coming up. The third guy that's ever held the belt might potentially be an old WWE guy. And you guys are saying that you're here to, make new stars and everything. And you got a star in the making, that being, a guy like MJF, and you're treating him as, hey, go sit out in the crowd and, be the crowd. And it's just like, I think you're doing a disservice to the kid, because he could be your top fucking heel in the company, even bigger than fucking Jericho, in my opinion. And you're treating him like second fiddle, to all the WWE guys. And I think they're just doing a disservice to some of the guys that they have on the show.
Who knows what their mindset is? It's like when they had that show and Dustin Rhodes and Cody had that great bloodbath, and you're just like, man, this is the way I used to love wrestling.
Oh yeah, it was a great match.
This is what AEW is going to be about. I'm watching.
Yeah,
that was fantastic. And just to plug myself, I had Dustin Rhodes' first match ever, so trivia. And it's actually his first, second, third match ever. But anyways, that was a great match, and you're just like, AEW's got something here. And then all of a sudden,
and it didn't last. I think it lasted one show, and that was it.
You don't have to have blood at every show, but just that kind of match. That match had everything you wanted. It had emotion, it had passion.
Yeah. I think you might not have been able to get a whole lot out of it. Like you might not have been able to do months and months and months worth of stuff with it. But I think they played it up. They played it up so well with, they did like a whole month's worth of like, promos and vignettes and stuff like that, where they were talking about, their hatred for each other and everything like that. And then it was just gone. The next show, it was like they had the big blood feud. And then the next show that they had live, it was gone. And it was just like, what?
Well, they hugged at the end of the match.
Yeah.
Cody asked him to be his partner or something. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, that was all just well done as far as the match and stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I don't follow the show religiously.
Yeah. I have a big problem with that. I don't follow the stuff religiously. Yeah.
Although I do like that Penelope Ford. She's hot.
Penelope.
I don't understand her hair color, but she's hot.
Do you like any of the guys? Do you know any of the guys, or who do you think's the most promising guy in that company right now?
Who knows? I don't really know any of them. They're all younger guys. I know more of the people who work behind the scenes, like Arn and Dean Malenko.
Yeah.
People like that. Billy Gunn. I wrestled Billy Gunn back before, right when he first started back in 88, 89.
Uh-huh.
When he wrestled as Kip Montana.
Yeah, I remember Kip. I remember that.
And then I wrestled him again in WWF when he was Billy Gunn, I guess. Part of what they called the Young
Guns?
Young Pistols. Young Guns, yeah. Young Pistols.
Young Guns, yeah.
WCW.
Who was he tag team with at that time?
Bart Gunn.
Bart Gunn? Yeah, Bart Gunn.
Yeah, both they were good, fun to work with.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't watch AEW enough to say who I think could be a star. I mean, I look at so many guys, they look so much alike. Like they brought in that Luke Harper guy. I mean, he's a decent worker, but he's nothing special. He's not going to, like, set your company on fire. You know, this is another big bearded goof, you know?
Yeah.
And he dresses like the Repo Man without his mask.
Yeah, he does. He does.
But I don't know. I mean, that one guy's pretty impressive for his size, that Jurassic guy.
He was
but he's more of a sideshow freak the way they have him portrayed.
He was more of a did you know I think he did a stint in NXT early on in NXT.
I think so.
I forget what his name was, but I don't think he lasted very long. But I actually I like his gimmick, you know.
Unlike most people, just because I don't watch the show doesn't mean I necessarily hate what's going on. And I certainly want everybody to survive and thrive and prosper and save the business. I don't want people to get the wrong impression, but it's just the stuff that I do see I'm just not a fan of.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it bad or good. It's just my opinion.
Yeah.
What's my opinion don't mean nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we're just people. I mean, everybody's, like I said earlier in the show, everybody's got an opinion, you know. So, but you'll have wrestling fans who will hate everything that WWE does and praise everything AEW does, even if it's worse than what WWE does or the exact same thing. Like if WWE would have did the Stadium Stampede the exact same way, oh yeah, people would have been wanting it to die so they could piss on it. Yeah, because for some reason people can't see. I don't know. There's just a hatred for one, and people who are blinded by hate will never see reality. That's the truth. I think that goes in part. Donald Trump. There's people who hate Donald Trump so much that he could save a busload of kids drowning in a river, and he'd get flack for not saving the driver. Yeah. Well, he saved all 50 kids on board. Yeah, but he didn't save the driver, the piece of shit. And he only did it for the money. It would have been Trump, let bus driver die, even though he saved 50 kids. Yeah. That's how hate is. Yeah. I'm one of those guys that cannot like a person. Like, I'm not a fan of Kevin Owens. Yeah. I'll give the kid credit when he goes out there and busts his butt and tears the house down. Oh, yeah. I'm not a fan. But I can see somebody and say, hey, they did good. Like, I'm not a fan of Nia Jax, but she had a great match with Ronda Rousey because of Ronda. Yeah. I'll give her credit. She was part of it. Oh, yeah. And I think that's a good thing. And that's something that I try to do. I could be this super critical, and nitpick and pull apart everything, that AEW does, but I don't. I could be just like the people that are tearing down WWE. I could do that too, but it's just like, nah, like if I see something I might not like and I feel like I want to talk about it, I'll say it. But, for the most part, I think everybody does a good job. Sometimes there's some stuff I don't like. Sometimes there is, and that's just the way it is. And I think that's what people need to realize. And I think it'd make their, if you're a fan of wrestling, I think it would make the experience a lot better, is to just, don't worry about what you don't like and like what you like. Yeah, it's like I'm not that critical when I see things anymore because it makes me look like the bitter old veteran, and people will think because you don't like something instantly you're just bitter, which is nothing further from the truth. And I understand everybody's in a tight position right now, or a tough spot. You're not sure what's going to work. You're probably not the most comfortable wrestling in front of nobody. I know. Yeah. I never liked practicing a real match at the school, where you have to sell and act like you're really wrestling and there's no one there, but you're just practicing. I had the luxury of wrestling a couple of places where there was like maybe 15, 10. I've done that before. So I kind of understand what they're going through now. We had a show many years ago. It was like Kendall Windham and I were in the main event. Yeah. Who was Barry Windham's brother. But we get to the show, and the guy's like, it's like nobody there. It's out in the middle of nowhere, and the guy's like, he's blaming everybody but himself, the promoter. There was people there, maybe 10, 20, 30, whatever it was. And the guy goes, you want to cancel? He called us all together. Luna Vachon was there, too. You know who she was? Yeah, I know Luna. And he calls us all behind the arena. He goes, look, guys, for whatever reason, we didn't draw. We're not going to be able to pay you what we promised. You want to cancel the show or you want to do it? And we're all just like, hell, well, let's just do it, So we went out there, and we had one of the most fun times ever. Me and Kendall, with Luna was my manager, and we just had a blast. Yeah. You ever see the movie The Jerk with Steve Martin? Yeah, yeah.
he's like walking back after he loses everything. He's like, I don't need nothing. I don't care about nothing or nobody. I don't need nothing. Well, I need this.
Yeah.
He picks up like an ashtray. He goes, but that's it. All I need is this ashtray. Oh, but I need this. And he takes a chair. He goes, but that's all I need is a chair and an ashtray. And he picks something else up and he just like leaves the room with all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I did after the show. I was like yelling at people, I don't need any of you. I don't need nothing. And I'd pick up a chair, but I need this chair.
What was?
When I got back to the dressing room, I had like a chair in my hand. I had popcorn boxes in my hand. I had my whole hand full of Luna was on the floor, literally rolling with laughter. Because everybody in the dress, I just did it to amuse the boys. They all got the joke.
Right.
But we're just having a blast, for nothing.
Right. What is it? I have a story to tell you, but I want to hear what you're going to say about what is the craziest instance at a show that you've ever had, whether it be, like say, like I don't know how it wasn't, back in your day, doctors being there and having to have, licensing and everything like that. What was the craziest situation that you've ever had to deal with as a wrestler in the business with, crazy show wise, like something fall, like you just mentioned, that instance there, but something a little bit more crazy.
Was either unexpected or planned?
Unexpected.
Probably the craziest is we were working in the Cayman Islands, which is somewhere near the Bahamas or something. And I used to hate to fly, and we had to fly to when Malenko was there, and Dean Joe Malenko, but my partner was a guy named Cyclone Negro, who was a famous wrestler in the 70s and the 80s, had amazing feuds with Dory Funk Jr. and different people, had a great punch, was a legitimate badass though.
Right.
I watched him as a kid, so it was really great to be able to be his partner. It was like a 6-man tag match or something. It was on this island. The ring was set up on a tennis court in the middle of nowhere. And the people were crowding around the ring. And I'm in the dressing room. It wasn't even a dressing room. It was like a dugout.
Right.
And I was nervous because the people were really rowdy that night. And Cyclone's like, don't worry about it, Bob. If anything happens, just stay close to me. I got you. So you instantly felt safe with him as your partner because he was, like I said, a legitimate badass.
Right.
And I was just a kid. I was like 19 years old. And we're in the ring, and it was at nighttime. And it was just like a makeshift lighting around the ring, but all the lights went out. And it was literally pitch black. It was like the great Malenko, a guy named Louis Estella, and either Joe or Dean Malenko, who were both shooters anyway, so they're all right.
Right.
And me, Cyclone, and somebody else. And all the lights went out, and it was pitch black. And Malenko yelled, everybody in the ring back to back and be ready to fight. Because the crowd was like rushing the ring. Mm-hmm. And we're all in the middle of the ring, back to back. I probably had I was probably holding Cyclone's hand, though, me like whimpering. And you could hear the crowd rushing the chairs, and they're like, the lights came on just before it was almost like a band of zombies trying to take over. They're like all getting ready to get up on the ring when the lights came back on. Then they settled back down. But we're all like back to back with our fists ready to fight. And then they settled down, and we went back to our match. Nice. Wouldn't you love to see that on film? But
oh my God, that would have.
I'm not saying I was whimpering, but
just to see you holding another man's hand and whimpering like a little schoolgirl would have been great to see.
See that because,
yeah.
But I had the honor of teaming with him several times, and we were the heels,
Right.
So, but he was just such a cool guy, and he always felt safe with him around.
I had an instance. I was in Pennsylvania, and little show. I can't remember the name of the company, but it was right outside of I can't even remember. Out near Philly somewhere, like a couple hours away from Philly. But I went to this company, and I'd wrestled there once before, and I went back the following month, and then I get there to the show. And they tell all the boys that the doctor that they're supposed to be having on staff is not going to be able to make it, and because he got caught up doing something, because he was an actual doctor, so he got caught up, so he wasn't going to be able to be there, and the athletic commission wasn't going to allow the show to go on, but they said they worked it out with the commission that we could have a show, but there could be no, actual, in-ring action.
That's weird.
Yeah. So like you can't get physical with anybody. You know, it essentially we did like an hour. It was maybe about an hour and 15 minutes show where we had not one match. And it was all just promos back and forth, you know, like somebody would come out and they'd be like, what kind of rinky dink show, or what kind, you know, it'd play it up, you know, about how shitty of a show it is. And, you know, what are you doing here? How are you going to be able to pay me tonight whenever I can't, you know, like, and it just ended up it ended with, I can't remember how it started, but it ended with just everybody, you know, like kind of in a shouting match in and outside of the ring. And that's how the show like ended. It just like, it was a really wild show because there's no physicality. You can't touch each other. You can't have anybody physically touch each other. Like not even
weird.
Yeah. And it was such an odd show, but the fans enjoyed it though. It was kind of it was very weird.
It's like you can all come in the theater, you can have popcorn and a Coke, but we're not going to be able to play the movie.
Yeah. It was just really weird. And like the promoter, he got out and he explained what happened, and he's just like, hey, you know, he was ready for the show to be canceled. Like he was ready for people to just get up and walk out. But there was fans, I would say there was probably maybe 75 to 100 fans there, maybe give or take a few. And it was at a flea market type place. And the fans stayed there, you know, they dealt with it and they had a good time, you know, like the most that you could get to is like you could get like face to face with each other and have like a fighting, you know, like an arguing match back and forth with each other. And it was just kind of, it was a time to where like they had their couple little stories that they ran, and they just furthered it along. And then the rest of it was just a free for all with, you know, like, hey, go out and grab the mic, say some shit. And then, it was just like throw shit at the wall and see what happens. And it was just a weird match. It was probably one of the weirdest things I ever had happen to me in wrestling.
There's a video online that's when George South was doing a show and the ring didn't show up.
Oh my God.
They had the show anyways, and like everybody's wrestling on a mat, or maybe there was like two I've seen. One was like Nikolai Volkov, I think was wrestling Bobby Fulton just in an empty gym on the mat. It's not an empty gym, people were there, but on the mats. And then there was another one where they're just wrestling on the grass because the rings didn't show up.
I'm gonna see if no ring. I'm gonna see if I can find that on YouTube.
We did a show years ago back. This is appropriate for the time we're going through now, where I wrestled a guy named Rick Ryder, who I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We had two cops involved, and I would go nuts and wouldn't be able to be restrained. Like Rick and I got into it, and they're trying to separate us, and the cops were trying to separate us, and I punched one of the cops.
Right.
And not for real, you know, part of the show. And the cops, they grabbed me and basically, you know, beat me down and put me in handcuffs. There's pictures online of me in the handcuffs. And the whole time I'm on the ground yelling, Rodney King, Rodney King, Rodney King, help me. Because it was right around that time
that
happened. Bear coming.
That's funny. Hey, Bear, how you doing, Bear?
Away from the dog, even if he's only 10 pounds.
The good old Bear, he had to make his entrance into the show, huh?
He's chewing on his bone.
Bear's always wanting to get over.
Well, you know, he's got an ego.
Yeah. For the people watching the show later, Bear is Bob's dog, and he's probably the most over thing on Facebook right now.
There's so many things we did back in the day that were fun. We did a promotion at a car dealership once where it was on the radio, and Rick was doing a promo, you know, for the show like the next week.
Yeah,
that we were going to do in the same area, but we did like this live event, like live appearance at the car dealership. And I showed up, and Rick and I got into a fight. We already had a car there that was planted, and I put Rick through the windshield.
Yeah,
and the cops come and they dragged me and put me in the cop car and dragged me away, and then let me go down the road.
Right.
And the next week our show was sold out because it made the front page of the newspaper.
That's funny.
It was all done designed to do that, but it worked. And that's just little things like that were so much fun.
I wish it would do more stuff like that nowadays. Like, I just don't see
you
it.
Do that stuff locally because you're friends with your local people. I mean, cops and different people Rick was friends with, and they like to be involved in that kind of stuff. It's fun for them.
Yeah, we had a couple instances in St. Louis where, you know, some of the guys got rowdy in a match and had the actual cops like rush into the ring and like yank them out there, and they're in full gear and you know, they got their fucking batons and fucking guns on their hips and shit like that, and you just see a bunch of cops rush the ring and just like yank people out. It's just like, damn, you know. So as a fan, you're seeing that shit and you're like, damn, what'd they do? Like,
I mean, you think back at WrestleMania 1 when they promoted what was Hulk Hogan against Roddy Piper at the War to settle the score, where Mr. T got involved and Orndorff attacked him, and all the cops jumped up on the ring to try to break it up. And that made everybody instantly believe, wait a minute, now this ain't supposed to happen, because they've never seen that before.
Right.
And look what it did.
Yeah.
You have wrestling today because of how good that sold.
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of cases where, you know, the wrestling community, you know, I mean, I don't know who's going to see this video. I don't know who's going to see this this recording, Bob. But you know, like I always have that hopes that, you know, somebody's going to see something or hear something I say and be like, you know, that might actually, you know, and things might just turn around to where you'd see, you know, kind of like the wrestling of, you know, the wrestling with the wrestling mindset of the old days, you know, kayfabe and.
Well, you'll see something like what happened on SmackDown last week, where Jeff Hardy, who has real life problems, basically gets mocked on the show and arrested. And even if it was done well, I don't know. I've seen little clips of it, but why? That's never worked. They made fun of Scott Hall's abuse or drug abuse. They made fun of Jake the Snake on alcoholism. They made fun of Hawk. It never went anywhere. Never meant anything except it makes your company look lowbrow, desperate. Because everybody knows if Jeff didn't have these problems, then whatever, he's still stupid, but you're not really making fun of his problems, but you're kind of making fun of his problems.
Right.
And your average wrestling fan probably doesn't know he has these problems.
Yeah.
They bring it to light. Well, I never knew that. Because most people aren't like looking at the news every night. You know, you get 5,000 or 5 million people watching your product every week. They're not all following it, you know.
Yeah, they're not. They're not all going to be on the dirt sheets, you know.
Yeah, they're not like scouring Dave Meltzer's website. Oh my God, man, Hardy got arrested again. I never knew he was a drunk.
Yeah, that's I've seen cases like that turn up, and because I remember seeing it on Facebook. I didn't even know what happened because I hadn't been watching it, and then I seen that roll up on Facebook. You know, a couple of wrestling fans that I'm friends with, you know, on Facebook, but you know, Jeff gets drunk again. And I was just like, I looked at it, I was like, man, did he, like, I thought for a minute, I was like, did he really get arrested? Like, I didn't know that it was like a work or anything like that. I was just like,
that's what they want people to believe.
I was like, did he get arrested again? I was like, so like, I immediately went to fucking Twitter and I was just like, I was looking to see, you know, where, you know, an actual story. And then I was just like, really? Like, people were like making it like, people were making it out to like he was actually like a legit arrested again, and I was like, that's kind of corny.
He like supposedly ran over Elias, who got took out by ambulance, but then somehow within a 2-hour span, Jeff was able to be arrested and come back and actually compete on the show.
Right?
Amazing, huh?
Yeah, amazing.
I don't think that could happen in life, could it?
No. I mean, if you run over somebody,
run someone over,
if you're drunk and you run over somebody, I'm pretty sure you're not going to come back on the show and do a wrestling match 2 hours later.
Come on, try to make us believe a little bit, you know?
Right. Well, Bob, I mean, we've been going for about 2 hours and 5 minutes now. I told you that we'd normally go around an hour and 30 minutes. And I got some other stuff I got to do for tonight. So could you leave the audience with any words of wisdom from Bob Cook?
Well,
anybody that you want to sing praise to?
Or praise, I don't know. If I was a wrestling fan, and the way I always was a wrestling fan, is you would watch the show because it's just a way to pass time,
right? Until
you stop sucking air into your old lung bags for one final day.
Yeah,
it's not a life-changing experience. It's not curing cancer. Sit back, enjoy, but most of all, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, you guys heard it. You guys heard it here, and like I've told you guys before, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and I thank you guys for stopping by, but also to fuck off and just leave me alone. Be sure to buy my shit, www.jasonstatic.com. See you later, bitches.